I wanted everybody to feel there was a real sense of authenticity on the set. And I was constantly saying to myself, get these words, get that performance, get it in the best way you know how, but let them cast the giant shadows.
I think many people understand that almost any role that Daniel Day-Lewis plays, he goes through a total immersion, and I think this was no exception.
What really made the difference were the contemporary accounts of encounters with Lincoln, their impressions of him. He remained so accessible.
When he arrived to start filming, he was no longer Daniel Day-Lewis. He was President Lincoln. He actually had so absorbed that character to the point that now everything that came forth from him from that point on has remained and been Abraham Lincoln. It's something I've never, ever seen before.
I never asked Daniel about his process. I never questioned it. I just received it with tremendous gratitude.
There's a sort of a mythic quality to him, and I think Daniel, I don't know how he did it, but I think he brought that with him, and I think it's a performance of subtlety and humanity that's essential to really making a Lincoln that you believe is Lincoln.
Abolishing slavery by constitutional provision settles the fate for all coming time.
Tony, Daniel, and Stephen formed the narrative as a triumvirate. And I think that this isn't just about one person, Stephen, inviting the collaborators in. It was the way that this actually could be told, was to understand from these three people what they wanted to bring to this story.
With malice toward none, with charity for all. Between the time that we shook hands on it and the time that we began to shoot the film, a full year had elapsed, and I didn't need to know anything more about him after that period of time. I just couldn't wait to start.
Thunder forth, God of war.
That's great.
In many cases when we were casting parts, we were looking in part for people who might have looked like their counterparts, but Sally playing Mary was Stephen's first choice.
Stephen asked me if I'd be Mary, and I literally started to cry and said, oh my God, yes. But the years went by, we had a reading of it, and then Daniel had come on board. And then I thought, now it's not gonna happen for me. I am 10 years older than Daniel. Mary was 10 years younger than Lincoln, but through the incredible generosity of two people, Steven Spielberg and Daniel Day-Lewis, I became Mary. Daniel flew in from Ireland so that he and I could test, and then they both called me and said, will you be Mary? I knew in my interior I was right for it. I'm exactly Mary's height. The difference is that I gained 25 pounds to be Mary.
I enjoyed every moment that I spent in her company, even when we were tearing each other's eyes out. I enjoyed every moment of that because she was real to me.
Don't you threaten me. You do it this time. Lock me away. You'll have to, I swear. If Robert is killed.
I absolutely love what Sally Field does with Mary. You really get this person who is fighting a battle against a lot of inner anguish. She comes across as a really great political wife, and I think she was.
I gather we're working together. The White House and the other house, hatching little plans together.
Mother,
What?
You're creating a battle.
Oh.
With Sally was an immediate connection, and we were good friends right out of the gate. I hadn't even heard of Elizabeth Keckley before I received the material for the audition. I, of course, read what I could about her. There are a couple of terrific books that have been written specifically on Elizabeth Keckley's relationship with Mrs. Lincoln because they were so close. As soon as I found out the great news that I had the honor of portraying her in this film, then I jumped right in. I took a 2-week road trip and I drove through the parts of Virginia and North Carolina where Elizabeth Keckley lived for the first 25 years, 30 years of her life.
My son died fighting for the Union. For freedom, he died. I'm his mother.
Nicolay was Lincoln's private secretary.
I wanted to do as much research as I possibly could, and it's a luxury to have 5 or 6 months to prepare. And there's so much to learn about this period, and it's endlessly fascinating.
I went up to Brown and I spent a couple days there. I was at the John Hay Library each day and tried to understand who he was for Lincoln and who Lincoln was to him. It's such an amazing time period and such an amazing character that you want to be doing all that research. Once you start, you kind of can't stop. But it's funny, you do all that research, but then you get to set and you're just like, go.
If somebody is open and real and seems to be living and breathing within a scene, that's all you can ever hope for. And that was vitally true of Tommy Lee Jones, who I've not worked with before, but I don't expect to have a day's work that excites me as much as that day did.
I kept asking Tony Kushner over and over again, did Thaddeus Stevens really say that?
The true purpose of the amendment, Mr. Wood, you perfectly named, brainless, obstructive object.
The lines in the movie that he ends up saying, the ones that garner most of the laughs, that are just the real gut punch in the House of Representatives with the arguments raging on, almost everything is what he actually said historically.
I knew that he was a radical Republican in the war. I didn't know much more about him than that. I knew that he was an abolitionist. When Stephen called and asked me to read the screenplay and if I would consider playing the part, I had read the screenplay and immediately said yes. I'm just very happy to be part of that very fine undertaking. And I immediately began to look for biographies of Stevens.
Congratulations on your victory, and get out.
When we were talking about the part of Robert Lincoln, it was Daniel Day-Lewis who right away said, I think Joe Gordon-Levitt would be an excellent actor to play my son in the movie.
When they offered me the role, we had a little exchange via text message, which was a delight. He was such a sweet and generous guy with his words. But also, it's a little bizarre to be text messaging with someone that I've idolized for years.
I won't be you, Pa. I can't do that, but I don't want to be nothing.
It's really clear how much everybody cares about this.
It became clear to me that William Bilbo was a sort of combination of different people. A lot of the department heads were happy for that because unlike a lot of the other characters, it gave them a tremendous amount of freedom in terms of what he could look like. So the makeup and hair department was very excited and the costume department was very excited because it gave them license to be able to have a lot more fun with what his appearance was like. I have more costume changes in the film than anyone else, including Mary Todd Lincoln. We were sort of neck and neck for a while, Mary and I, but I think I've surpassed her.
W.M. Bilbo. Yeah, Mr. Bilbo. Gentlemen.
Sir?
It's been really exciting to be part of a trio. It's been great figuring out what each of our roles is within a given scene.
I have explained to Mr. Bilbo and Mr. Latham that we're offering patronage jobs to the Dems who vote yes.
I think there's humor written for all three of us, though.
Should we get to work?
This is a cast of 150, and David Strathairn plays Secretary of State William Seward, Lincoln's right-hand man.
He wrote home once to his wife and said, Lincoln, he is the best of us. The relationship between Seward and Lincoln was one of deep respect, but they were very, very different in the way they worked politically.
As Preston Blair, can I call on him?
God help you.
We knew that we were going to get Hal Holbrook to play Preston Blair. We just couldn't imagine anybody better. Hal Holbrook's career as an actor speaks volumes. He's always playing such magnificent characters. And it's also kind of remarkable that today he's still doing Mark Twain on stage.
I've done a tremendous amount of research on Abraham Lincoln because I actually played him 4 different times. So watching him create Lincoln has been very interesting. He likes to remain within himself, which all of us respect.
Think of all the boys who'll die if you don't make peace. You must talk with these men.
I intend to, Preston.
There's a lot of us that have been cast out of New York that all know each other and have either worked together or I've admired their work for a long time.
Tommy called it our little repertory company the other day. And that's really what it feels like. But to get a chance to see people like David Costabile, Stephen Spinella, David Warshawski, the list goes on and on and on. These are accomplished performers, artists.
What Tony has given us are the words. They were orators, they were speakers, they were articulate. It's thick with dialogue and discussion, and the characters are full. It's really amazing.